What's up, everybody? Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles. Today we're going to talk about assist feeding and force feeding. The topic that comes up, the controversial topic, assist feeding and force feeding your snakes. I want to go into this video when you should be doing this, why you should be doing this, and the reasonings behind it. You know, what would even make you want to do this type of thing. People usually jump to this a little bit too quickly, and there's also this kind of mix between what assist feeding is and what force feeding is. Most of the time I see assist feeding turn into force feeding, which is just a terrible situation overall. So I want to just kind of dive right into this, and I am actually going to do assist feeding on film. I am going to do force feeding on film, but I want to give you the reasons why this is occurring before I dive in and recommend or show you guys how to do this. So this is really important. Pay attention. So, reasons for doing this. There really is only one reason to assist or force feed a snake. And in my opinion, that is because they don't understand what the prey is. So a lot of these snakes, most of them will thrive. Let's say I make 100 snakes over the year. There might be 2 or 3 that just don't get it. They don't understand, and I think it's important to go through the process before you jump to assist and force feeding, because it is so stressful on these snakes. And a lot of the times, once you get to this point of assist and force feeding, the snake is in pretty bad condition anyways. But at that point, you should have exhausted all of your other options. So I'm going to take, let's say, a Burmese python, for instance. Before I even consider assist feeding or force feeding, and I'll tell you the difference between them, is what have I tried? Have I tried a live mouse? Have I tried a live rat? Have I tried a frozen mouse, a frozen rat? Have I tried leaving them in overnight? Have I tried putting them in another feeding container and leaving them in overnight with a live rat, a live mouse, a live, frozen mouse, a frozen rat? Have I tried those options? Have I tried scenting with bird? Have I tried bird? Have I tried everything that I can possibly think of? Most of the time people are like, oh, I tried to give it a frozen thawed mouse twice and I think I need to assist feed it. They haven't tried everything. They haven't exhausted the options before they put the snake under a tremendous amount of stress. Usually one of those options will work. Now I have a couple snakes who are they're getting into that danger zone. So these are Burmese pythons. They were born late June. It's now mid-September and they haven't eaten on their own yet. I've tried a live mouse. I've tried a live rat. I've tried frozen thawed mice in the enclosure overnight. Frozen thawed rats in the enclosure overnight. I've tried chicks. I've tried quail. I've tried different types of prey items. One of them, I actually had 4 of them. 2 of them, as soon as they saw the chick, they ate it. No problems. Okay, this is chicks. Now I start scenting the mouse with the chick, and now it's eating mice. No problem. Frozen thawed mice, no problem. So that is the point where if I prematurely force fed them or assist fed them, that snake could be at a point of no return. So I still, like I said, I have these 2 snakes. I've exhausted all the options. There's just no interest in the food. And it's at the point where today I either need to assist or force feed. Now let's talk about the difference between assist or force feed. Before I get into that, just to stress, it is really because these snakes they just don't get it. They will... their conditions are good, their cage, I've changed it up, I've put more coverage, I've exhausted not only the prey options, but different ways that I can manipulate the cage to make them feel more comfortable. They just don't get it, they don't want it. So at this point, I want to do something before it gets to the point where it's bad and they're not healthy and they're no longer able to thrive, and that is assist feeding. So what assist feeding is I will literally take the snake right behind the head, and I will gently put in again, and I am going to do this on camera, I will gently put in a small prey item, something that's small. The smallest I have right now, I think, are small fuzzy mice. So that's what I'm going to use. I'll put it in its mouth, and I'll drop it and leave away. Just leave it. Sometimes they'll spit it right up. Sometimes they'll take it, and once you walk away, and you'll notice immediately, when you put the mouse's head inside the snake's mouth, they will either wiggle their head side to side and drop it, or they'll sit still and they'll kind of breathe and wonder what the heck's going on. Now that's kind of prey recognition. That is assist feeding. That is good news. That's like, all right, they get it. They understand that this is food. But again, this is after I've exhausted every option. So I've put it in. It's good. It's now eating. It's fine. Now, if it spits it up and wiggles its head back and forth, I might give it a day or so and try it again. If that doesn't work, and I know it doesn't work, then that's where I need to go into force feeding, where I put the snake, same thing as assist feeding, I put the prey in the mouth, except I'll then use a pen or some tweezers, something to go behind the head of the mouse and slowly work it down the snake's body, use my thumb down the snake's body to push it into the stomach, and then I'll again do a very similar thing, just leave it alone, let it finish pushing the prey into its stomach. We're usually into the clear. But what I want to stress about this is, if you've received a snake that is eating, or you have a snake that has eaten before, there is another reason why that snake is not eating, and it's not time to assist or force feed. It usually never is. That to me says something is wrong. It understands what the prey is, but if it's not eating, that's either it's a health issue with the snake, or it is something wrong with your setup. Something wrong with your temperatures, your humidity, your coverage, you're handling it too much, you're stressing it out. So a snake will eat. Once it understands that prey is prey, a snake will eat. But for it to eat, it needs to understand that nothing is going to hurt it. There's going to be nothing in the environment that is going to hurt it throughout the process of eating. There's nothing in the process of digesting. So if it did eat and then it stops eating, or if it's never eaten because you just got it shipped, whether it was from me or from somebody else, it's usually because you're doing something wrong, and the snake doesn't feel comfortable enough. And I don't mean wrong in a bad way, but you're doing something that's different enough that it's no longer comfortable. And that is something that needs to be addressed, because force and assist feeding has no place here. If you are constantly assist feeding or force feeding a snake, that means something is incorrect in the snake itself. And there's just something wrong with it. You know, you should never have to continuously do this. There shouldn't be something where the snake's eaten a whole bunch of meals and now you're continuing to force feed. This is my opinion. I've never had to do this to snakes. Always, if there was something wrong, or if they weren't eating, there was something wrong with the snake. If they were eating in advance, sometimes the snake just is a weak animal, and it just isn't gonna thrive. But the key is if it ate first. So without further ado, I'm gonna flip this camera around, hopefully get a better angle. I don't really have a good way to do this by myself, but I'm gonna try to get this on film. Of what I'm gonna do it on 2 baby Burmese pythons. I have some fantastic ones up on the website that are eating amazing on frozen thawed. These, I might even show you one of those compared to one of these so you can see the size difference. So you're going to really recognize that this is a snake that's been eating and this one isn't. And they do all grow at different rates, but I want to kind of show the difference in size between the two. So let's flip it around and we'll dive into it. Okay guys, so we're here, and these are some of the snakes that I wanted to show off. Before we get into the assist feeding and force feeding here, it might be somewhat difficult to tell the difference visually between some of them that are a little bit further apart, but these are all ivory Burmese pythons. They were all born on the same day, or all hatched on the same day. You can see this one here is one that I plan to assist feed today, compared next to the one right here that has a couple males in it. This one's been eating on frozen thawed since day one. A couple of these are still available. The ones that I'm assist feeding are not on the website. I don't want to put them up until they are perfect on their own. But you can kind of see the difference here is just, I mean, this one here has been eating. This one here has been eating. This one here, which you can tell is a little bit smaller, has not been eating on its own. Or at all, I should say. And same thing with this one here. You can just see there, maybe I'll use my hand as kind of a size difference, but you know, there is a baby ivory Burmese python that has not had a male in 2 months since it started eating. And then, see this guy here, who wants to bite me, has had a couple males. So you can just tell, at least I can visually standing here. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but there's still not a significant difference. They're not really, you know, in the red zone yet. But what I want to do is, now that I've exhausted all my options on what I should be doing, how I can get them to eat, I want to get them feeding and have a couple meals in them before they get to the red zone. Because this is the point where they can still be recovered. Once they recognize that this is food, they'll be able to take to eating again. So I'm going to flip this around again, get a couple of these snakes out, and we're going to start the assist or force feeding process. I don't know if this is going to be assist feeding or force feeding. We'll find out once I start getting these snakes out. But these are the two snakes I'm going to do it on. We're back. We have this snake here. What we're going to do is we're going to grab right behind the head and wrap our fingers around like this. I know this snake, and I do not believe it will take an assist feed, so we're going to go for a force feed. I have my little mouse right here. I'm going to use it to slowly open the mouth of the snake, and I am just going to kind of work it down with my hand as best as I can. Then I'm going to use the pen to follow in behind it. So the assist feed, this is essentially where I would stop. And at this point, the snake would probably close its jaws around and stop moving. So I'm just going to slowly, from each side, I'm going to use this pen, just little by little, this marker, I guess, to push down a little bit more. And hopefully you guys can see this. So right there, it just gave a push. It did not like that. It wants to spit it back up. So again, just little by little here. And once I get it in, almost fully down, with these baby mice, you have to be really careful that they don't kind of pop from their teeth, which this one may. So I apologize if that does happen, but it's just kind of part of what we're doing. And I'm just going to kind of give this another little push. So you can't see it, but I can feel it in my hand right there. It's resisting, so I'm just going to straighten its neck out a little bit and continue to push. Just like that. Take the marker out. I'm going to close its jaws, and I'm going to just try to work it down a little bit. And at this point, I'm going to put the snake down, but I'm going to have to put the snake back. But I want to see if it will keep it down. So that's perfect. So this snake will finish eating on its own. I'm going to put it back so it doesn't run out. We'll see where that goes. So here is that first snake that we just force fed, and you can see that there's the little lump in its body right about where my fingers are. She did eat. Everything is well, and hopefully we'll get her eating. So I'm going to flip the camera around again, and we'll talk about what to do next. Okay, so we're back. I just did the force feeding on those snakes, or assist feeding, whatever we're going to call it. Personally, I think they're kind of the same thing when we look at the big picture of this. But what is important now is to understand what are the next steps. What do I do now? So, for my opinion, the next steps for me is I'm going to start at the most enticing prey item next and work backwards again. So the whole cycle starts over. It has a meal in it. As you could see, that snake, I actually did a couple of them, but I didn't even realize that when I was doing it, my hands were not in the view of the camera. So you only saw the one, the ivory Burmese python that I did, and I showed you the before and after. All the other ones they did eat. The next thing is that the cycle is going to restart. It has some food in it. I'm in the clear. Hopefully it understands now what this smell is, and it doesn't associate it with that horrible kind of action of force feeding. But I am going to put in a live, small little hopper fuzzy mouse, something that will move around. If you go too small, they're not going to move, and the snake might not see it. But I don't want it to go too large where the snake's afraid of it. So the next step is that I'm going to put in that small hopper fuzzy mouse. I'll leave it in overnight, and hopefully it eats. And this will be live, because live is going to be the most enticing. So that's going to be the goal. I'll do that. I'll give it about a week or so, let the snake de-stress, not handle it, not focus anything on it, just kind of go in, keep the cage clean, and we'll try the live. If that doesn't work, I'm going to do a couple other tricks, and I may need to do that a few more times to get it out of that red zone. But that, in my opinion, is the absolute only time you should need to assist or force feed. There's obviously special exceptions if the snake is sick and needs to get some food into it, but there we're talking about there's another underlying condition that needs to be treated before the feeding, in my opinion. and the snake is sick. So if the snake is sick, if the snake is in shed, whatever it is, for whatever reason it may not be eating, those are things that need to be addressed before focusing on the feeding, because a snake can be eating, but they're sick and they're just not thriving anyway. So it's always kind of, in my opinion, taking care of working from the easiest to the most extreme in the situations with when you're feeding, and then trying to understand why they're not eating, working from the simplest, which could be it just needs more hide, you're overhandling, the temperatures aren't right, to it just doesn't recognize prey and maybe it's sick, or it's just a weak and dying animal to begin with. Just like humans, they are weak snakes in litters. There's not every snake is going to survive. If it was, a snake wouldn't have 30, 40 babies at a time. The chances are that 90% of those are going to get picked off by prey. The other 10% will raise up and repopulate, and that's just kind of how it works. So you got to keep that in mind when you're breeding snakes, when you're raising snakes, and again, trust the breeder. Trust the breeder that you're going to. I should never be sending you a snake having to force feed it. Unless something is off on your end, or the snake got sick on your end, there should never be a reason to force feed a snake or assist feed a snake. So please, hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, give me the thumbs up. I didn't like doing that on camera. I don't like doing it in general, but it is part of what we need to do. So hopefully this helped a few people out. If you did like the video, again, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and until next week, let's keep it moving. Thanks, guys.